It is truly a pleasure to be back in Singapore, which is one of the liveliest and most vibrant and connected places in the world, and conveniently for me, only 2 hours of time zone, and of course one of the only places that I can reach Canberra on a direct flight, so it is well positioned. So I see that we are right now standing in this global crossroads: finance, trade, diplomacy, and education. And this is a good opportunity to think about the world around us and as it presents itself in 2018. We certainly live in what we can think of as the apocryphal interesting times. And this well-worn phrase has been said many times before, but I'm going to argue that not all times are equally interesting. And I want us to think about whether or not right now is going to look like the time of the rise of Sumer, the age of the Egyptian pharaohs, Athenian Greece, the glories of Rome, the Han Dynasty, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution. Or less happily, is it going to look like the time of the Three Kingdoms War, the fall of Rome, the Ottoman Wars, World War I and World War II? Only time will tell, but we are entering what seems to me the most interesting time for humanity since World War II and the early Cold War. The pace of technological change is staggering, and this is accompanied by a new social and political uncertainty with global instabilities that have not been present in my lifetime. But we're also lucky enough to live in a time of hope and progress. Human longevity has moved quickly up to greater than 71 years, where the fraction of the world living in extreme poverty is dropping precipitously from 35% in just 1990 to less than 11% in 2013, according to the World Bank. We live in a time where every human on planet Earth will soon be able to engage with the rest of the world digitally, by mass transit, and by trade, and where we are ever more able to precisely manipulate life through our understanding of the human genome. We have developed the beginnings of artificial intelligence. We are recording data on unimaginable scales, and new technologies that, in theory, when brought together, should do much of the hard work we all do right now and give us more leisure time. These are the rewards of the collective ingenuity of the human race. But humanity is also affecting our planet. We live in the Anthropocene age, where our use of the Earth's resources is not sustainable over the current human lifetime, where the rapid rise of prosperity for all, especially now amongst some of the haves in developed economies, has slowed for the first time since World War II, where democracies struggle against the rise of populism and the abundance of information, some true and some false, where autocracies are able to double down with AI and big data to increase their powers through the control of information, and where everyone finally has a voice, but it's actually quite hard to hear what is important amid the deafening collective noise. In these times, I think humanity is at a crossroads. It faces a choice. Either we choose to power through the Anthropocene with knowledge, technology, and human organization, creating a more prosperous world that is able to thrive on Earth in a sustainable prosperity, or we see ourselves fall into conflict where the haves and the have-nots fight over the finite resources of Earth, where everyone finds themselves less prosperous, less secure, and ultimately less happy. To navigate through this interesting era requires a multi-decade look at the challenges we face and the solutions we might develop. And these solutions will involve ideas not yet had and technologies not yet invented. They will require marrying social sciences and technology, and they will need to bring alongside and include the entire world. We in the university sector will be, in my opinion, the most critical of all institutions in finding the pathways to a more prosperous and sustainable global future. We will educate those, young and old, who will be productive in a rapidly changing world. We will undertake much of the research that underpins the technological development required to cope with our demands on the planet. And we will be the place where much of the thinking emerges on how to marry technology with human behavior. And we will be the places most open to contemplating whatever changes to the world order which are going to be required to keep the peace as this change occurs. In other words, we must lead if we are truly to serve humanity. And this isn't something we, the university sector, can wait for permission to do. It has been the role of universities for almost a millennium to challenge orthodoxy and think big. Now is the chance to step up, to do things differently, and to lead the way. So the opportunity to help steer my university to take on this challenge was my key motivation to leave what, can I say, was a very comfortable and largely uncomplicated lifestyle as Nobel laureate to become vice-chancellor, which is, can I say, anything but. I am going to focus on my thinking about how to make universities have impact. And yes, this involves transforming society with our research, but it is universities' intertwined missions and values that make us different, and I believe are essential for research to ultimately have its transformative power. These interactions are worth reflecting on, and I will do so later because they are often taken for granted, and I believe they are likely to come under threat over the coming decades. At the core of universities' value to society is our increase in the stock of knowledge. Not just STEM, not just things which have a potential path to translation. It is the whole of the academic enterprise. It is from this stock of knowledge that new ideas, revolutions in technology, and societal transformation emerge. Even in the most friendly of societies to universities, I still see skepticism emerge on a regular basis, where every piece of academia should be justified about its direct utility to society, with filters suiting the political mood of the day applied on each item. This unfiltered pursuit of knowledge, I argue, is the building block of all that we do, and we must continue to fight all attempts that seek to hinder its pursuit if we are going to be able to advance prosperity for all on a global and sustainable scale. I'm not going to dwell on that, but that's a founding block of what our institutions do that make us different. But our millennium of history does not mean that universities should not change. So let me give some examples on how, at ANU at least, we're trying to break out of business as usual, and that will give you a sense of my thinking, illustrating by example. The Australian National University, like the vast majority of universities around the world, finds its relationship with business on tenuous ground. We don't understand each other very well. Business finds it difficult to identify if we have knowledge of interest to them. They see that most of our research is too abstract for its immediate needs, and our staff seem much more intent at working on their next Nature paper or manuscript than being a highly responsive partner. Now, I do not expect everyone, or even most of my staff, to work successfully and continually with business. But it is important that we have people, and a number of them, who can successfully translate between academia and business. It is also certainly becoming expected that our students can translate their education into something tangible for their employers. And to this end, we have created a series of innovation institutes led by entrepreneurial staff members who have track records at navigating between industry and academia. These staff and their institutes are meant to provide a template for the rest of our community on how the industry-academic interface works, so the rest of us can have some guidance and confidence of what to do when an opportunity presents itself. Our innovation institutes and their founders are introducing a new culture to my university, a culture of innovation that we are supporting with lots of carrots for those who wish to pursue it. And I hope it will lead to a greater migration of tangible outcomes from the knowledge within my university. Now, the institutes themselves are not meant to be business as usual technology. Anything that can occur outside the university will ultimately do so much more efficiently. So rather, we are working in areas at the leading edge of technology, at things at a stage where businesses are not prepared to typically invest on their own. For example, we have created a new academic hub, the groundbreaking 3A Innovation Institute, which stands for Autonomy, Agency, and Assurance, where we're creating a new applied science to help manage the machines. Under the directorship of Intel's senior fellow and former vice president, Professor Genevieve Bell, the 3A Institute is doing nothing less than carving out a whole new disciplinary field aimed at helping us optimally design systems that work in the emerging and complex area that brings together artificial intelligence, big data, and cyber-physical systems, and how they interact with humanity. Our intention is to influence and shape emerging technologies early on in their design to reflect humanity, culture, and values, and make sure that these advances bring prosperity, not chaos, to the world. Genevieve is bringing a whole new culture of industry to the way the university works along the way. She's just jump-started a master's program in record time, which involves creating itself as part of the program. What she's trying to do does not exist. She's trying to invent a discipline that does not exist right now. Another innovation institute, maybe a little more mainstream, has brought together the inventor of the nanopatch, which is a needleless vaccine delivery system, Mark Kendall. Has brought him to ANU earlier this year, and he's creating a platform around wearable technologies that can continuously measure what is happening inside you without needles or discomfort. We are co-investing in a new company that involves himself and other researchers, where we hope the research in the university, it's very fundamental, can be quickly translated into technology that can be brought to market. Again, it's a different type of relationship with industry than my university has ever had before. We're trying to challenge culture in many places. We've challenged our staff to look at how we can take the deep expertise of the university and apply it for public good. So we provided up to $10 million for each idea on a regular yearly basis, and just last week, we had 4 interdisciplinary teams, including many of our most prominent researchers across the university, young and old, pitch their ideas to staff. So they really were in an audience like this, and they had to go out and pitch to our staff. The program around creating a zero-carbon energy solution for Southeast Asia emerged as winner. They are working with a major industrial partner to create a multi-billion-dollar industry of exporting cheap and reliable renewable energy from northern Australia across the Timor Gap to Timor-Leste and Indonesia. The team is actually remarkable and includes, yes, energy experts in physics and engineering, but also our economists to figure out how the market will work, our environmental scientists, because the scale of this is huge, our indigenous scholars, because the program will be run in indigenous land in northern Australia, our humanities and legal experts of Southeast Asia, because you have to actually have a whole system of reliability and trust to make this actually viable. It has brought together the university in a way that I could have only dreamed of. It's a bottom-up program. So these are just a few of the ideas we are pursuing. I could go on, but it gives you a sense of at least our approach. And I'm hoping that these programs will encourage more of my staff and students to take their knowledge out of the university and create new businesses or invigorate existing ones. So we have created, of course, a whole ecosystem like most of you have, from proofs of concepts to late-stage capital, to help our ideas blossom. My goal is to make sure any good idea of the university is as useful for society as possible. We're also trying to better understand what the needs are of existing businesses to support SMEs by, for example, subsidizing their access to our equipment and resources where they can be of benefit to these small companies that normally don't have access to that type of equipment and capital. In all cases, we're taking a highly flexible approach in our dealings, tailored to each person or company. And while there are reasons to protect the university's IP and royalties that are going to emerge from this, I take my cue ultimately from Stanford and MIT that it is even more lucrative to help make people and companies do well so that they really are able then to give back. So for example, if you look at Stanford in 2016-17, they received $45.4 million US in royalty income from 808 separate technologies. A nice chunk of change, but it rather pales in comparison to the $1.13 billion in philanthropy that they received that same year, 20 to 1. Now, many of the barriers of our future prosperity are not technologically driven, they're societal. The political institutions and democracies around the world are finding it very difficult to have healthy debates around fundamental issues affecting our societies that enable sensible policy responses. Universities are a safe place, I would say the safest place, where conversations that societies need to have happen can happen. For example, in Australia, we have very specific issues around members of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. In addition to profoundly different health outcomes, there's an unaddressed lack of recognition and self-determination as required by UN treaties which Australia has signed, and enduring racist language in our Constitution. And while the vast majority of Australians want these issues addressed, there is great uncertainty and I would say unwillingness to do it within political circles. So to help advance the issue, we ran a First Nations governance forum in July where we brought people from around the world, the UN, from other countries, looking at First Nations governments and self-determination, had many members of Parliament attend. And we just followed it up with a roundtable with Jeffrey Robertson, members of Parliament, and experts that has helped inform a joint select committee of Parliament addressing the issue. We're helping Parliament get on and have that conversation that they know they need to have, but is in a political impasse. And there are a whole range of places where universities can be the circuit breakers in controversial spaces. Where political leaders are unable to go, universities can, and we should. Inequality, security, climate change, nuclear proliferation, mass migration, international relations. These are the biggest issues our nations are facing, and they're all bogged down in the political processes that are crying out for clear, evidence-informed solutions. We can be part of that. This is how to build up nations. And if we can get the political system unclogged, get conversations and a momentum on addressing the big policy issues, we will remove many of the impediments to the productivity which ultimately drive our economies and bring prosperity to all. It's not direct, but it is important. But to have these conversations, universities must remain places where ideas really can be freely expressed, even in this polarized world, across cultures, across politics, and age. And while these conversations can be tough, and we must remain supportive of those who feel aggrieved in them, we must allow scholarly conversations on controversial issues. And this is an emerging threat to our institutions. Universities' autonomy and integrity are being continually tested, as is academic freedom on our campuses. And this is not a left or right issue. It is both. We're being attacked from both sides. It is essential for universities to resolutely stick to our fundamental principles that insulate ourselves from being corrupted by the politics and biases of the day. To help increase our positive outcomes, we have realized that we need to have a sophisticated discussion on what success looks like within our university. It's not just how much you publish your nature and science papers, it's ultimately your impact. How have you changed how people think and how people act? Whether it be your students and their outcomes, the technology you have brought to market, the policies you have helped create, the discoveries you have made, they are part of a continuum. And my approach is to let each academic have the freedom to have impact over the spectrum however they see best. But try to hold them to account within a framework. We're working on it. It's not easy, but I am encouraged because it's pretty obvious to me and my staff which of our staff are having impact across this spectrum, even if it is relatively hard to quantify with a single number. In the end, for me, it's realizing that mediocrity is the enemy. Business as usual has its place, but it should be surrounded by bold thinking and risk-taking and the pursuit of new ideas. If we are really going to solve the world's problems, we need to encourage our staff to be risk-takers, long-term thinkers, and not just always playing it safe to get the next grant or the next incremental paper out. But it also means we need to find a way to support our staff when they fail or when the results are slow to come out because the problem is hard. At ANU, we're looking at safety nets, seed funding, income contingent loans as part of the mix of support to support researchers who are prepared to take risks. Now, I haven't talked much yet about our students. When I talk to government or business, the thing they are most excited about at my university isn't actually our research. It's our students. They want access to our students, and I don't think I'm alone on that. Our students are our most potent ambassadors. They take knowledge and disperse it around the world, embedding it directly into business, into government, and into civil society at a scale well beyond any other activity we do. Yet we continually underplay this crucial role of research universities, our teaching. I believe the Humboldtian tradition, where education is informed by research, is actually coming under severe threat right now. Many universities are splitting their education from their research. And I suspect, actually, that university rankings are partially behind driving this behavior as they're currently constructed. The basic idea is simple. You massify education using non-research active faculty who are very good teachers, cross-subsidize research-only staff with the profits of teaching or other income, and in theory, you get students who are happy and inspired by these great teachers, and happy researchers who didn't want to teach don't have to teach. But the teaching-research nexus is broken in this, and I don't think it's sustainable. It begs the question over a decade, why should those students be taught at a research university at all? It's much more efficient to have them taught at a teaching-only higher education institution, and probably commercial one, where costs can be driven down. But this is a dangerous and unsustainable cycle because in its first iteration, students are being taught by a generation of teachers whose higher education was informed by research active staff. However, in the second generation, the students are going to be completely decoupled from the research we do of the day. And while elite institutions may feel immune from such an issue, we'll keep doing it, I'm afraid eventually they too will be effective because the entire university environment is one of cross-fertilization and interdependency. And if a huge section of the university ecosystem suddenly drops out, The research universities, think of them as the apex predators, but probably not the best analogy, will end up being isolated from the talent and ideas that currently emerge across the system. For my part, I'm trying to make sure that we think deeply about how research informs the teaching of our graduates, and that we don't just take it for granted. Making sure that my entire research staff teach and that they are supported in their teaching so that it is effective, that's step one. I want every student to have a research opportunity as part of their degree. And as we train the next generation of leaders, our students, we need to treat them as intellectual partners, not parcels on an assembly line. Another threat to research universities, especially elite ones, is that their social license has come under threat over the past few years. Not so much in Australia yet, but certainly in the United Kingdom and the USA. The rise of populism has created segments of society that see universities as the enemy. Not to just no value to them, but actually see us as working against what they find as their best interests. We're working very hard at ANU to get in front of this in Australia by changing the way, for example, that we engage with communities across Australia, including about how we admit our students. Rather than in a nebulous admissions process, we're targeting the best and brightest across each school in the country. And my hope that communities will rally around their best students' opportunities, and these students then will become our ambassadors back into these communities. While we do a lot of work that has positive impacts in communities across our country, we can better engage with these communities to explain what we are doing and actually listen to what they want to do in the form of joint projects. We are here at the time of the Times Higher Education rankings, and rankings are looked by our prospective students, our future students, our staff, and our societies for clues as to how successfully we are fulfilling our missions. Despite their visibility, it is my belief we university leaders cannot be slaves to the rankings and their evolving methodologies. Rather, we must have the confidence to do the best we can at our missions and hope the rankings sensibly reflect our successes and failures, noting each of our institutions' idiosyncrasies. More than anything, universities going forward must place themselves at the epicenter of society, guide the transformations that must occur if humanity is to achieve a globally sustainable future. I'm afraid the alternative, for me, is not worth contemplating. Thank you very much.